All right, we're live. We're live here with Sonny Brown from Sonny Brown Martial Arts and Lang's MMA and Jiu-Jitsu in Sydney. Sonny, we've trained together a handful of times. We've done jiu-jitsu comps. We've fought on the same cards. We've shared dressing rooms. I've seen you in your undies.
Yeah.
Why don't we give everybody else an origin story about where you started martial arts, and we'll go from there.
Sure thing. So how far back you want to go from the start?
Yeah, from the start. Let's go from the start because I think it's fun because it helps people who are thinking about starting knowing that Sonny Brown martial arts didn't come out of his mother's womb kicking and punching. Well,
no. Yeah, let's moving on. So, I mean, I guess I pretty much started, like, I think I was 24 or something, like 2007. I think it was, which basically was from not doing any sport after I left high school. And, it started working in IT and had just stopped doing all sport completely. I used to play football and things like that. But, of course, once you turn 18, the idea of, football training on a Thursday night for a game on Sunday morning is not as appealing as, hanging out with mates. So I was looking for something to do, had seen UFC. So I'd seen that ages ago on some of the old tapes. I knew that there was a place down the road from my high school that was teaching training, MMA training, because back when I was in high school, I had a good friend who was training down at Lang's MMA in Manly. And it was in the Manly Daily when Elvis fought Tito for the title. I think maybe that was like 99. Mm-hmm. And so I'd seen that in the paper, just a local paper, and that was always in the back of my mind that, okay, there's this place that does it. And I mean, it was I probably, again, had to build up a bit of confidence to actually go start training, because especially from watching those early UFCs and just hearing about this place that does it down the road was like far. It was very, kind of seemed a little underground or whatever still, or just rough.
You maybe feel like you're going to go move into a den of murderers or something, but it's the complete opposite, which is an important lesson, which is why we do these origin stories all the time, because most martial arts clubs aren't a den of murderers. It's just not the case. So
and it's certainly not. It's certainly not the it's certainly not like a den of murderers or just like really intimidating that much once you get there. And that's pretty much been the case for, all different places I've trained when I've gone around the world, because for the most part, it is a sport and people are there to train and learn and have fun. And like for the most part, people aren't there to cause problems, right? They're there to solve problems. And so I went down with a good friend of mine, and, that was actually part of getting the confidence, was like talking to a mate and, let's go down together. Let's do this thing. Let's get into it. And, we just went down and started training. So, one of us would pick the other person up and drive down, and, one of us would pick each other up, drive down, and just go training, and kind of just went from there. And I think we kind of just started with the intention of just doing a new sport and keeping fit, and then eventually been training for a while, and a comp came up and it was like, do you want to try this? And it was like I think Shudo comp. I can't remember if I did the jiu-jitsu comp or Shudo first, but went in the comps. Like, I remember I won the first jiu-jitsu match, lost the second in whatever comp that was. And then the Shudo match I won, and was like, okay, I'll keep doing it, Went from there.
We had good tutelage at that time because Anthony was already training with Elvis and doing a bunch of stuff with him, and John Will. So you were pretty lucky to be at like one of the early sources of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and mixed martial arts in Townsville. Just so everyone knows, Sonny also won at least two Australian mixed martial arts title, and he go-go platted my friend Damien Brown, and we still tease Damien about the go-go platter to this day. So he just jumped online and had a good laugh about it as well. Then, to be honest, I still don't think he could defend it, but it's always good to tease each other. So
yeah, he's gone on to great things. So
you're a school teacher. You still train. Now you're doing this really great podcast at the moment, breaking down techniques and fights and common themes that you see all the time, which I love, because one of the things I did when I started competing myself is whenever I go to a fight show, I would try and pick like common themes of weaknesses of all the clubs that were doing poorly, and common themes of like strengths of all the clubs that were doing well. And it was one of the reasons why for a period of time I took the Randy Couture style and was pressing everybody up against the fence, because I knew a whole heap of people didn't know how to wrestle against the fence, and actually led me to buying a cage to train in just so I could have an advantage over people that had coaches and all these other things that could help them out, because I was more or less self-coached after the first 12 months, because we didn't have any super dedicated coaches up here in Townsville that were willing to travel away with me and do all those things. So how did you get into those breakdowns, and what inspired you to do it? And I would really love to know the process of how you choose particular techniques or things that you are interested in.
Yeah, sure. Be happy to talk about that. So I guess first I'll just double back onto the ending up at Lang's MMA under Anthony Lang, because at the time when I was looking for places to train, I remember looking around at all the different gyms in the local area, and Anthony's was the only one that I could find that was doing MMA, that was doing cross training of all the different disciplines. And I think I've been very lucky to end up there and be able to have trained that from the very beginning. They were still offering shoot fighting classes, they were called, where we'd mix everything together. And I know not a lot of other places not many places were doing that at the time. And it certainly took a while for other places to kind of start doing it. So very lucky to have that in the area and to be able to start from there. And so then I guess following on from that to getting into the breakdown side of things I was always, interested in learning more about, the sport, I guess. And I've been watching breakdowns online, obviously BJJ Scout, Jack Slack, a few of the top tier guys. And it was just something that I was like, okay, I want to try and give this a go myself, especially when I'd made the decision I'm not going to compete in MMA anymore. And I want to, start coaching more. And to be able to do that, I want to give myself the best ability to know what I'm talking about, basically. Give myself the best ability to be able to research people and try and figure out the ways to go about that that's going to be the most beneficial to me and anyone that I'm able to coach. And just then I guess also then edit it together and make it entertaining for other people to watch online. Which is another thing completely that I found out. And so the first one I did was on the leg mount position. So it's what Habib uses when he ties up the legs of people against the fence. So people call it leg mount. I've now taken to calling it the leg clamp. People will call it leg triangle. No one's ever settled on a good name that everyone knows it by, it seems. But so I did that position. Now, the reason I did that position was because, one, there was nothing out there on it, at all. There was no, instructionals. There was no one else had done a breakdown of that positions. So I knew that if I actually wanted people to pay attention to it, then I should pick something that no one else had covered. And if I do a good job at that no one else had done it before, well, then hopefully that should get some attention, and you know, people might pay some notice to it, and that kind of seemed to work a bit, because we call it Khabibing. Yeah, or Habibing. I got one nasty comment today saying on my YouTube channel saying that they don't like the way New Zealanders say the word Khabib. So I'll have to be careful with that. It's Habib. No one knew at the time. No one knew at the time.
We can't help it. It's the Kiwis and Australians. We all share a bogan tongue. We do our best. That's obviously,
right. That's right.
And Fletcher down from Dennis's. Oh, sorry, down in Dennis's gym. So we've done some stuff with Dennis as well up here, running my jiu-jitsu tournaments together. Look, I love those breakdowns. And look, I think anybody that's involved inside martial arts at some point in time, we should all be going to our coaches with questions like, did you see that thing that bloody Khabib did? What is that? He was doing it over and over again. Let's play with that and explore. And I think MMA guys have been really good at it, because we're not caught by the dogma of like one particular style being super successful. Even these days, like, you know, there's a lot of talk about, you know, like different styles of jiu-jitsu not being successful in the UFC, when at the beginning we all started jiu-jitsu because it was this Vale Tudo thing that was super successful in the UFC. And now jiu-jitsu being a sport of its own has gone off down all these different little rabbit warrens. And while I still think it's super successful, it all has to be put into context as well, which is interesting. It's something that you do well. I like the fact that you love catch wrestling, and all these different things. We've talked about it a bunch before, and you've taught at my center in Townsville. Who do you think has been the greatest influence besides Master Lang yourself on your jiu-jitsu?
Oh, my jiu-jitsu? It's probably a tough question. It depends what time I've had probably different influences. I mean, aside from like the other coaches in the gym, like Peter King, Rob Hill, rolling with him like all the time was when we were getting ready for fights, obviously. Was a big influence. Also, you know,
it probably needs a shout out. Rob Hill was a killer on the Australian MMA. He did have a little bash of it throughout Asia as well. So he definitely deserves a little bit of props.
Yeah, for sure. And, you know, Nick Pudney, another guy down there. And, you know, I mean, everyone in the gym, right, is all influenced. You know, everyone you train with, all the training partners, they all do a big influence. But I guess, like, I was definitely one of those, I guess, blue or purple. I was looking at Eddie Bravo's stuff and, you know, playing around with the rubber guard and things like that. And that still is, I'd still say, an influence on me. Then probably actually, like, at some point, I think at brown belt, right, I rolled with Kellerlock Sod. I have to get the right pronunciation of his name next week when I'm doing commentary for Subversion and he's on the show. But Keller, ADCC veteran last year, and man, his pressure game was just something else. Like, he was tapping us from, like, obviously the Kesa the Kesa Crush that he's got. He was putting this side control pressure on that was getting me, and, you know, he's putting the hand underneath the back that was just brutal. And that, actually rolling with him a couple of times and getting tapped from that, I was like, far out. I want to have that kind of pressure game, right?
Yeah,
and then because I felt like,
I love that, and I think most of us guys do that pressure. That's, you know, like, I've felt it a few. Some of the judo guys are really good at it, especially from Kesagatami. Dan Higgins is a master of it. Again, another really good Australian mixed martial arts coach. But before you know it, he's wrapped around your head and you just can't breathe. And it is definitely, there's something beautiful about the simplistic nature of sucking the life out of someone with just really positional asphyxiation, which I suppose is one of those things that is a hot topic at the moment.
Yeah, and it's like it kind of felt like, that's kind of what either as a black belt you want to be like super slick and just jumping all over the place and, you know, like moving like water, or have that pressure where it's like just, you know, that, or, you know, and I guess ideally you switch between the two as need be. But then I also remember when I was like white belt maybe, or maybe just blue, we had this, it was a judo coach, Goran. I think he was like former Olympian judo or state judo coach, or he's definitely like legit on the scene down here. And, you know, he knows his judo well, as you might say. But he rolled with us like when I was white belt, and he's like he was older then, and obviously more so now. But the way he just kind of just like climbed up, I was still like young and, you know, maybe spazzy. And he just, pressure just shut us down and just like climbed up the legs and just controlled me the whole time. And that kind of stuck with me, where it's like, wow, that guy was able to really just shut down the game completely. And so I guess at some stage thinking of that, you know, getting smashed by Keller, and then thinking back to that role, I'm like, well, if I want to do this long term, be able to keep rolling until I'm 60 or whatever, 70, whatever, that might be a good option to explore. So that's kind of been informing my.
Yeah.
Sorry, go on.
Well, I like the denying people options thing. So, you know, like as a martial artist, because believe what you will from people who say that we're not, but mixed martial arts to me has always been about martial arts and the ultimate answer, or the ultimate truth for all you Kyokushin guys out there. It's always been about just trying to find the ultimate truth. And what that ultimate truth to me has always been is martial arts is a problem-solving tool for emotional and physical conflict. That's kind of where I've ended up after all of this, you know, and I use it as a metaphor for life, where there's no pressure that I can't think or feel my way out of. And I love that thing about like slowly cutting off someone's options, you know, like, and that's kind of like what you want to do, whether you want to be successful or get out of something. You have to slowly cut off people's options until you get the best result for yourself, you know. And that's what I love about jiu-jitsu. And that's what I love about martial arts and that pressure style game. Because realistically, like if you want things for self-defense, like mixed martial arts is the best thing, because it does give you the problem-solving tools at all ranges to create and deny options. So that's why I love that game. And it takes me down that rabbit hole every time. And you know, like I really do enjoy that part of that style of game. Is that, you know, if we were to explore that rabbit hole a little bit further, what's the reason that you reckon you do martial arts now, and what do you reckon is the best benefit for you and your students for martial arts?
Yeah, well, you nailed it there where you said the problem-solving side of things. It was actually when we were up for one of your not Courage, Trident tournaments. I remember we're sitting around once, and he actually goes, you know, we're martial artists, we're problem solvers, and that kind of stuck with me as well, because I'm like, yeah, you know, that is a good way of looking at it. It's just we're solving problems, because I think, you know, there was some issue had come up and we're talking about it. And that is the biggest thing long term now that is going to keep me going through it, where I look at it like it's fun. Obviously, it's a fun sport. We get to keep fit, and, you know, I just enjoy doing it, enjoy playing the game. But the ability to just like practice that problem solving under pressure, I think is that little bit of extra enjoyment that comes out of doing martial arts that you might not get in other sports. Because like anything can be fun, right? You could do touch football and find that fun, and you get a good, and you also get a good workout. Or video games are fun, but you don't get the workout. But it's that problem solving under pressure that you get every single night when you're rolling or doing martial arts. That does seem to be unique to the sport. I mean, I guess in some, say football, you're still going to have some level of problem solving going on the fly, but I don't think it's the same as that, that conflict that you get from martial arts. And so that's what I look at, just that problem solving ability under pressure. And I try not to attach any kind of extra meaning to that. And I think it's beautiful in its simplicity like that, where it's just problem solving. We don't need to bring any spirit or chi or anything else into it. It's just problem solving, and that can be whatever problems you got. And our society, at least, values problem solving under stress capabilities. So no matter what you do for work, you're going to be solving problems one way or another.
Absolutely. It's valuable. It's so valuable. It's definitely could be a valuable tool for a better society. Unfortunately, violence has a stigma attached to it, rather than just understanding it for what it is, like something that isn't gonna leave, because we're no more peaceful than your average tiger, and we aren't as separated from the animals as we think. So if we want to stay separate from them, studying it helps. And that's a whole nother rabbit hole again. And I do love that about martial arts, and it is nice that there's lots of people to talk to about that as well, because there's a whole heap of people out there just waiting to get into martial arts clubs. They're like, oh man, are these guys, are they murderers and criminals? Like, am I going to get knocked out on my first night at MMA training, or is someone going to break my arm if I don't know how to defend an armbar? These are all worries that people have. What would you do to set someone's worries at ease that was thinking about dropping into a martial arts club?
It's a good question, because it's pretty easy to fill them with platitudes of that the fact is there's more chill people there than there would be down at the the pub or something like that. But to actually make it convincing, I think is a difficult task, because the stereotype's so widespread. So the best way to go about it is, obviously if you can go down and just have a look at someone's class, you don't, without the pressure of signing up, I think that's always a good idea. Just go stick your head in, and that will, probably alleviate any fears they might have. But I think one way of looking at it is, I actually did an interview with a PhD from England, Dr. Alex Channon, and that one interview on my podcast will be coming out sometime, maybe this week, next week, on the Sonny Brown breakdown. And he actually wrote a paper called where he talked about the idea of edge work, and it was making the case that MMA and people doing martial arts, it's actually not violence, but rather it's mutually constructed risk. So violence would be, the act of fighting with no end in mind, kind of just to inflict as much damage as possible. But really what we're doing in martial arts is accepting that risks are involved. There is the risk of a broken arm or something like that. Probably not on your beginner's class, but there's risks involved really with everything. But we're accepting that risk voluntarily and arming ourselves with the tools, both physical and mental, to be able to control that risk as best as we can. And I think that's a good way. Sorry, go on.
There's a group controlling that risk. You have either a coach, a referee, judges, and officials. There's always a group of people controlling that risk with a bunch of agreed values as well. So you're absolutely right, because funnily enough, I talk about the difference between sporting violence and real violence a lot with my coach Paul Cale, who's an ex-special forces soldier, and he loves that stuff. He's like, MMA's not violent. You've got a ref there. What are you talking about? It's not even violent. You're play fighting, you know, and like, and it is a really important point. You know, like you're not going to die. You know, like of all the MMA matches that we've had ever, there's been such a small amount of deaths. There's still been more deaths in boxing. So it's really interesting that there's another professor out there saying, no, it's agreed risk. It's not actual violence, which is interesting, I suppose, if you, depending on whether you break down what the word violent means. But if you were talking about social violence, you'd have to mean that there's some kind of like miscreant or kind of like misguided nature to the emotion that people want to do harm to you. And while in MMA they want to do harm, they only want to do so much harm until the referee stops them and they win.
Exactly. So it's that idea that it's not necessarily people in there doing violence. It's people in there walking this line of risk and controlling risk, and that's part of that problem-solving ability. And granted, some of that's going to come down to the culture of the club wherever you go, because in the culture of individuals, like, that's not to say every single person that you go into a gym is going to be the nicest person you've ever met. There might be some people who, for whatever, there's those people in anything that you go to that you're not going to get along with. And so part of it is just finding the right culture that fits you, whatever that may be as well. But knowing that for the most part, like, I can't, no one even comes to mind, or at least people who have stuck around for the long term of, people who are there just for violence sake or to hurt people. I mean, I can't think of anyone who've, maybe they come and go and before I even realize who they are.
Yeah, they don't hang around for too long, and we're all our own kind of crazy. Like, I think somebody that sits there knitting for 6 hours a day to make a jumper is crazy. Like, you buy one down the corner of the road. Why are you wasting your life knitting? So we're all our own kinds of crazy. That's definitely a thing.
That's true.
So,
and yeah, I mean, part of it is just finding what you like.
What's the end goal for the
Sonny
podcast? Where do you want to end up with this? Are you looking for a job as a school teacher, or are you hoping to go full time online? You're going to do instructionals? Are you looking for a coaching gig in Sydney? What's the deal?
Man, who knows at this point in time? I mean, like, at one point I was thinking, full-time teaching and then running a place at night, but then, like, let's just wash out and see what 2020. Let's wait for what happens at the end of 2020 in the wash, because it's just a crazy time to try and make any plans. But, like, ideally, I just want to keep, in terms of the online stuff, I just want to keep making as much stuff as I can, kind of getting as many interviews as I can, doing as many breakdowns as I can, just because I enjoy doing it. I mean, that's, in terms of martial arts too, I think that's the main thing, is that you to do anything long term, you got to make sure that you enjoy it first, and then that's going to give you at least the motivation to keep going. So, like, I enjoy putting doing the interviews, putting the breakdowns together, putting it out. Like, that's just fun. I do that no matter what, kind of. Same with coaching, and then I just hope that
people too,
it all works out.
You've talked to some really interesting people too. So, who's the favorite person that you've talked to? So, I'm going to put you on the spot. So now you got to pick who the favorite person that you've talked to so far. At least if you pick them as a favorite, they'll probably go back on. So let's do it. Who's your favorite?
Yeah. No, I think so far it's probably the interview I did with Matt Linland.
Yep.
Because, man, I was just like, maybe, I don't know, I have to go back. Maybe he was the first big name I got or something, or maybe Greg Nelson was, but just the one with Matt Linland, because he is the, coach of the Olympic Greco-Roman wrestling team. And I got to speak to him for like an hour and 15 minutes about coaching wrestling and just really pick his brain. And at the end of that, I was just like, I am so lucky to have been able to do that, because it was just such a good conversation. And I kind of felt like, wow, I got like a seminar from him just in the middle of the day of just answering all my questions. And that I don't know, it still sticks out. So yeah, I'd say that one too. Also, Andy from School of Grappling. Those are some of the first ones I did, and he like really changed the way that I was thinking as well. So I mean, the whole process for me is just great to like just pick people's brains and get it's just an amazing opportunity to be able to do and share it with everyone else as well, so everyone else can enjoy the benefits.
What was it for those people that haven't seen that podcast with Matt Linland? What were the top 3 takeaways from the Matt Linland podcast?
Yeah, so the way he was describing it, and I mean, part of it is the way that wrestling is done over there. So he's getting athletes coming into him that have been wrestling forever, kind of in their peak. They're the best athletes around, but part of it was how he was explaining how he would retrain the folk style wrestlers to the Greco-Roman mindset of wrestling, where folk style wrestlers were very risk averse, and he had to change their mindset to be more risk taking in Greco. At least I hope I got that the right way around. And just the way that he would go about doing that by just asking the athletes, asking these wrestlers questions and making them fail into coming to their conclusion themselves. So he would get them to like fail into learning what he wanted them to do. And the way that he went around about explaining that was just, I was like, wow, this is coming from the Olympic coach. I'm fascinated to hear what he was saying about that. So that was really good. And then he told like a cool story about training BJ Penn for fighting George St. Pierre, which was amazing as well. Again, just like, going with those athletes of such a high level. So yeah, that was good.
It's interesting because it would take a high-end athlete that was taking hits to their ego when they're losing to come to their own decisions because they love winning. You're not going to do that with everyone. But with a high-end athlete that absolutely hates to lose, it's actually a really clever tactic. So, because we all know that like when you're that type of person, sometimes you need to make your own mistakes. You're like, no, I got this. But, it's definitely would be a horses for courses type tactic, I believe. So I'll have to jump back and have a listen to it. Now, what was this BJ Penn story? I love BJ Penn.
So he told the story again with dealing with high level athletes about how BJ Penn loved just with his back against the cage, just hanging out. And it was kind of the story about how he couldn't get BJ to change his mind, I think, where he was trying to say that that's not going to be the best way to fight this fight against GSP, but BJ was pretty stuck in his ways. So it was that was how he was going to do it. And so he kind of, I guess, contrasted that with getting people to change their minds to his experience with BJ Penn. And yeah, just hearing that, just getting to hear that story firsthand was like very, very cool. Very cool. But yeah, like you said, it's definitely going to be different for individuals. But I think like one of the big realizations from talking to all these different people is the idea that when you do like fail into that understanding yourself, it's going to stick so much more than if someone was to tell you to do something. And that's why, you can tell someone to do the right thing a million times and it will never stick with someone. But if they kind of discover it themselves, that's what's going to make something stick. And so then the job as a coach or something is to try and figure out ways that you can make people discover things on their own. So that they always come to the conclusion on their own, and kind of like, they'd never suspect that you didn't tell them that. They came up with it themselves, and that's actually going to make it stick for them, And it's figuring out ways to do that is going to be the best way for people to learn anything. And it's not easy.
Jiu-jitsu coaches do it a little bit, and I've been trying to push that over into striking a little bit, where I'll propose, here's some concepts and systems, leg, head, body, long distance to short distance, short to long, angles, and then let people create their own strategical combinations and things from that, where it's like you have one guy that's a Kimura trap guy, another guy that's a front headlock guy. You just give them systems and they decide which one they're going to gravitate towards and start doing some of that mental training themselves. So it is interesting, very difficult to do, and I don't think any of us have really truly mastered how to help people do that 100% yet. But I think he's definitely on the right path. I think somehow finding a way to listen more as a coach, or provide frameworks for people to build their own game plans and decisions is important.
Yeah. And it's finding those ways to do it that is kind of what's interesting me now, is the best ways to go around that. Because especially with jiu-jitsu, I think the way things have been taught is still it's very much a holdover to how it was 20 years ago kind of thing, and it's not been keeping up with the latest teaching methodologies. So there's room to improve and grow. The difficulty is it's such a complicated sport with so much room for different rabbit holes to go down in terms of moves and just different areas of the game you can work. It's certainly not, and MMA even more so, right? It just expands even more. So it's not easy to distill things down into nice little units.
Well, even, I was listening to Alex Volkanovski in one of his podcasts the other day. He's like, I've spent so much time on the wall, I couldn't even explain to you exactly what I'm doing. I just know not to do the wrong things. They spend so much time, practicing not getting caught in all the things and having different training partners and whatnot. And I think that kind of active learning, which stems from a whole heap of hold training and situational training where it's as live as possible, and then, you can have different grips and different problems. I think more people need to get amongst that. I think there's still a tendency to show a bunch of random techniques and then just free roll at the end. There's definitely a lot of that happens. There's definitely the same thing happens for Thai boxing, where there's people want to show a bunch of random techniques and then just spar at the end with no kind of skill building games that they've designed. So I think and you listen to Senchai and John Wimpa talk about these freestyle pads, which, it's great if you've got a pad holder who can just attack you and throw all these things. But I think situational sparring and things like that can definitely replace having a really skilled training partner and stuff all the time, where you agree to a bunch of rules that direct you towards a set of skills that you'll need to solve that problem. I think is something that more people should be doing, and I want it to get out there because I want Australians to do better. And I definitely think that's a way forward for all clubs to start moving in.
Yeah, I think so. And that, that freestyle pad work. I mean, that would be great to just have that level of communication, non-verbal communication going on with your pad man. But that's gonna take some time to get started. Like that's gonna take a while. It's easy to just call out combos, you know. That's the one of the things is the way things have been done. It's good in that it's reliable that it's gonna, you know, if you call out a combo, someone's gonna be able to pull it, you know, generally do it and follow along. Whereas the freestyle pad work type thing, it's gonna take a while to get that rhythm worked out with someone, and then, you know, a new person comes along, you got to start from scratch. So
it's definitely impressive. I'd love for, because I mean he's hard to get hold of. I'd love to see if you could get a hold of him for a podcast and ask him how his pad holders and the guys develop that as a skill. I'd be interested to see, because it does make sense because of you're adding more free play, and the more free play you can add to these things once you have the basics set out, the more you're going to be able to create, because you know fighting's a very chaotic type thing. Now,
it's those. Oh, sorry.
No, go.
I was going to say that, and it's not stopping to actually think about something in the middle of a fight, right? Because I don't know about you, but is there any moments that stick out when you were fighting and like you kind of stopped to think about what you were doing and like, you know, you kind of snapped out of the moment, out of that intuition, and you started thinking, oh, do I bring my leg up, or where do I grip, or anything like that, and it kind of throws you off?
All my best performances were from when I had mentally planned out and fought the fight a million times in my head. So I knew if I ended up in guard, what I was going to do. I knew if I ended up on the bottom inside control, I knew I was going to do. I knew if they had hit me with a big punch and rocked me, what I was going to do. I knew when they pushed me up against, you know, like I'd mentally fought out this fight. And I have an exercise that I go through with my guys to try and fill those gaps for people. And I even do it for our jiu-jitsu competitors that are worried about competing. I'm like, we'll just come in and look, we'll go through everything, worst case scenario for everything. You tell me what you're worried about and we'll do it. And we do it. And that was I got that from the military, you know, like it was like if we were going on a mission, like we would have everything planned out, you know, like if we got ambushed or something bad happened or we lost communications or we lost each other, you know, there was always plans for these things. So my best performance were when I'd really done that. And then sometimes the worst ones were when unexpected things had come up that I should have foreseen, you know, where maybe I'd gotten lazy with my prep and I was like, I got this, you know, I'm gonna steamroll this guy.
That's the problem, because you need a lot of confidence to do it, right? And so you don't want that confidence to be take the place of actual skill development too much, you know.
Or the process. You should just, if you're thinking in a steamroll, just go through the process. Anyway, like it's really helpful to go through that process anyway. I think when you're building as an amateur, sometimes there's some fundamental gaps that need to be fixed between 0 and 12 fights. But after that, there should be a regular process that you go through for skill and strategy development. And then once you get those bigger fights and you know that you're fighting someone who's going to be stylistically in a particular way, because, you know, like by the time someone's had 20 odd fights, they're probably going to stylistically fight very similar for the rest of their career. So you can start to game plan for those people a little bit, and you'll already be good at it because you have a process in place for dealing with those things. So, you know, I think being process driven helps, and that's where I think my best performances came from anyway. But it was definitely, you know, like myself, I was my first coach only came to me out to like my 4th or 5th fight. I went to the first couple by myself, you know, and I think I left
like a gangster.
Yeah, I think I left him 7 fights in. Well, it was, you don't know what you don't know. I just thought it was a done thing that people went by themselves until I realized that, everybody else had the same team there every single slam. It is what it is as the sport was growing. And I imagine that just came from his own experiences of not being supported either. But it's not, it doesn't have to repeat those things. But, let's leave on a good note, because I always like to wrap up these things and give people a tiny little bit of direction. Now, obviously, everyone loves you at the moment as the breakdown master. Wow. And you're actually really good at coaching a bunch of different styles, because I've sat in on a few of your lessons, which is good, and you've taught it at my club. What would be the one bit of advice that you could give everybody at home that's struggling to study using BJJ Fanatics and everything else? Because it's easy to buy those things online, and you look at a little bit of it, and you're like, I don't know where to start with this. And guys like Lachlan Giles and John Danaher, they're freaking great, but it's a lot of content for even an experienced grappler by myself. I watch 10-20 minutes at a time, grab one or two bits of gold, write it down, and add that detail to lessons during the week, and only hit little bits. What's your advice to help people study at home and do their own breakdowns and add to their skill sets with a bit of home study?
Yeah, good question, because it's difficult to answer. Because even if you're getting the instructions or something like that, I mean, ideally then you've got someone at home that you can practice it with, but I mean, that's not always possible. And again, there's so much stuff out there that there's no way that you're going to be able to go through it all. And then if you're watching it at home and then taking it into a class where then you're getting shown something else, and then you're going to try and implement it during a free roll, it's going to be difficult. So I don't really have the best answer on exactly how to do that, other than maybe I might say that, watch some competition stuff, MMA or jiu-jitsu, and maybe ask people around you, ask your coach who you should be following, or maybe not who you should be following, just whose style do you think I naturally I look like? Who's kind of at a top level? What am I doing already that it kind of has the building blocks of a top level competitor? And then maybe, start watching some of their matches and maybe check out their stuff, because it's one thing to just pick something off the shelf that's great, but might not fit your game where you're at. So if you can find something that kind of is already going to complement where you're at, and then that might make the process of it a bit easier,
Yeah, I think
that's my idea, but that's a tough one.
Well, I think communication with the coach will help. So I think you hit the nail on the head with asking your coach what you think would be the best instructional for you at the time. But I would suggest going one step further and trying to get inside your coach's curriculum. So let's say your coach is going to do closed guard for the next couple of weeks, then buy the closed guard instructional from someone, or something that has to do with closed guard, like a whole heap of arm bars instructionals, or you go through the Kimura domination, but look at all the guard stuff as part of that. So that way you are pre-studied before you get to class, where you know some things about guard, and then hopefully your club will roll in guard that night, and you'll get to try the things from your class and from the DVD and put it into action. So I think communication with your coach definitely helps. So that would be my advice, and I think it ties in nicely with yours, with trying to figure out what their coach thought would be best for them, because people have definitely come to me and gone, I've got this, and I said, well, that'll be great when we're going through that. We're about to go through that position. So have a watch of it then, I can push you towards this instructional now, because I'm all for it. Because I think, especially like, let's say Martin can only make classes 3 times a week. He could still get 10 minutes of study in on the days that he's not at classes. So he's actually studying jiu-jitsu every day, and it would maximize his use of his time than when they're at jiu-jitsu on those other days. Because it's such a good, healthy thing to do, to stop everything and invest in your own hobbies. Especially now when, the average person 18 to 44, the worst thing that's going to affect them in their life is possibly mental health. So being able to invest in your own hobbies with time and effort is definitely one way to fix that.
Yeah,
all right.
I mean, it's something you got to enjoy.
Yeah, something you got to enjoy. Make it fun. Make it fun. So what we might do, we've gone pretty long today. I'd normally try and keep these about 25, 30 minutes, but I thought you and I would probably go well over that. So thanks for your time.
I talk too long.
As soon as they open up the borders, get you up to Townsville for a good week of coaching and training. It'll be super duper fun. So anyone who's watched this today, please jump on. Make sure you give Sonny a follow on Instagram and YouTube and Facebook. That way you can get links and start enjoying his podcasts and breakdowns like I do. Have you got any last shout outs you'd like to do, Sonny?
Shout out everyone, I guess. It's follow us, Sonny Brown Breakdown podcast and Sonny Brown Breakdown on Instagram and Facebook too, and all the good stuff. And just keep training.
Awesome. Thanks, Sonny.